Hello, unstoppable real estate investors. I'm your host, Rayana Starr, and with me is my guest for the week. Derek, how do you say your last name? Dombeck?
Correct.
Okay, Derek Dombeck. And we have a real treat with Derek because he's very experienced in, I'm always saying that there's lots of ways to make money as a real estate investor. And when you're new, you tend to go with the basics, wholesaling, rehabbing, and buying rentals. But there's a lot of strategies that like tax liens and creative financing and things like that, there's so many different ways you can make money as a real estate investor. And Derek is doing the podcast circuit right now because he's very creative in his approach to real estate investing and wants to get the word out and get and help people see non-mainstream ways to be successful in real estate investing. So Derek and I met through Patrick Ypez, and he has a big Facebook admin networking group of podcast hosts, guests, trainers, mentors, coaches, and that's how Derek and I met. So we're in Unstoppable Real Estate Investor Podcast. We do these podcasts on Wednesdays at noon, and we're interviewing top 5 percenters. What do I mean by that? There's really a dismal failure rate in this industry. Like 90 to 95% of all people that try and attempt to be a real estate investor fail at it. So it's quite impressive when you consider people like Derek who are doing it and thriving. And then on Fridays, we spotlight members and clients who are maybe just starting out. And so we're looking at both sides of the spectrum. So Derek, I really appreciate you taking time to join me today. And I wanted to first know, before we were just talking about how he lives up in Wisconsin. He's an Eskimo pretty much.
That's profiling.
And they've already gotten a couple of inches of snow. And so, Derek, what were you doing before you got into real estate?
So I came out of high school and got into the construction trades. So early in my 20s, working with my hands was how I put food on the table. And before I actually realized I was going to be a real estate investor, I had bought a fixer-upper house on some acreage and renovated it and turned that into my personal home. And it wasn't until I was about 25 or 26, my wife, Tracy, and I had gotten approached by somebody that was really trying to recruit us to be financial advisors. And again, coming from a small community in central Wisconsin, all of this was brand new to me. I had no idea how money actually worked, which is really sad how our education system is. And it was like a light bulb went on, and I didn't want to be working with them selling stocks and insurance products and things of that nature, but I really liked the real estate side of it because I already knew I could build equity with my hands, with my labor. That wasn't the right way to do it long term, but I knew I could succeed at it. So my wife and I started in 2003, late 2003. And like most people, we took some training material. We bought some fixer-upper rental properties here in Wisconsin. We also made some connections in Florida and started to do some new construction projects in Florida. And, we did really well through 2004, 5, 6, and 2007 hit. And what we had built up decided to wave bye-bye to us very quickly. And that's when the education started. The loss of everything we'd built for the most part, and the realization that using banks, which is what we did, gave us zero control over our business. And we had 2 options. We either quit or we figure out another way, because there was no way for me to use banks moving forward for many, many years in the future. And so we started looking
Well,
at,
let me interject. What about leveraging like hard money lenders, private money lenders, um, creative financing? That's where you're going with this.
that's where I'm going with it,
Okay.
because at
Yeah.
that time, all I knew was using banks. That's what I was taught, right?
Yeah.
And my biggest mistake, Rihanna, was I didn't build a network. It was myself and my wife and one other local couple that we bought our first properties from. That was our original network. So when things started going bad, I didn't have anybody to reach out to and to call. I was a closet investor. I kept to myself. I was almost ashamed, right? Like everybody that's in this business has had this happen. A friend or a family says, "Oh, that's risky. Be careful. We're worried about you." They don't know anything about our business, but that almost shames a lot of people into trying to hide what you're trying to accomplish. Well, that's the exact opposite of what you really should do. You should shout from the rooftops, "I'm a real estate investor. I'm a house flipper. I'm a landlord," whatever you're doing, and tell everybody. You should have an elevator pitch. I don't sit down in a chair to get my hair cut without that person knowing what I do and what I'm looking for by the time they're done cutting my hair, because I have a captive audience. They can't go anywhere for about 10 minutes. So
Yeah, I want to interject here because you're making a really good point. That is a point that I beat this drum a lot. Is there's one exception to that. If you want to fly like an eagle, don't hang out with turkeys. And if you find you're an eagle in a turkey pen right now, then you hold your dreams close to your heart and you don't share them with the wet blankets in your family or your friends. You just don't let people dampen your spirit or your dreams. Other than that, though, I think too many of us are afraid to sound too salesy, or we don't, we're so used to being sold and pitched and promoted, and especially being virtual now, you just feel like that's the pace of that has really gone up. But what I've noticed is successful people are just confident and bold, and it's very clear what they do. And I'm constantly telling this to people in my groups, because I have a women's entrepreneur group and then the Unstoppable Real Estate Investor group, is in order to get visible and make connections, because this is a relationship business, you've got to let people know what you do. Like, I was flying out to my niece's wedding last month and sat next to a gal on the flight. The whole flight we're talking, turns out she's a real estate investor. And I'm telling her about my project to build tiny house villages. She's like, "Oh, you know what? I might be interested in that." In the whole flight, we just talked, and she's like, "You're my new best friend." Just because we were willing to have a conversation about what we do. So I like what you're saying there, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. When you're matter of fact about what you do and you own it, people are going to react to how comfortable you are with what you do and how passionate you are. And they're going to want some of that.
well, and to build on that, what I also realized in 2007, 8, and 9, after, we went through what we went through and we were trying to get through it, was learning how to talk to people. Because you mentioned you don't want to be too salesy. I hate the fact that there's gurus out there that are, selling packages to people to go be wholesalers and go be flippers and do all this stuff. And very few people want to go and learn how to actually talk to people and negotiate, because it's not a sexy topic to sell. Right.
Are you familiar with Brent Daniels?
I've heard the name. I don't.
Yeah, if you look at his stuff on YouTube, Brent Daniels, his whole thing is TTP, talk to people. That is his whole focus, is exactly what you're talking about, is talk to people. You're just, people. One of the places a lot of newer investors get stuck is, one place I coach a lot of people is they're afraid to talk to sellers. And they're afraid of sounding salesy. And I said, well, one, you're not selling anything, you're buying. So let's just shift your mindset there. And then two, it's not about you. It's about them and how you can help them. So say more about that.
And that's the problem, is it's all mindset, whether you're
It is.
raising money or you're trying to buy a property. Just to your listeners, think of it this way. If you know that there's a seller out there that needs your help and you do not reach out to them and call them and talk to them, you're being selfish because you're not helping them when you have
You
the
are
ability to help
absolutely,
them.
I agree.
And
You
it's the
are.
same thing with raising money. This was hard for me to get my head wrapped around, but if I am out there, in my mind, I'm begging to borrow money, that's the wrong mindset. I'm
Right.
giving somebody an opportunity to get a great investment, a great return secured by real estate. When you have that mindset shift, raising money is totally different.
It is.
And people that are newer in the business might find that hard to believe, but that is a fact. And once you embrace that, and once you start building a network and letting people know who you are, what you do, not in a salesy way, you're not bragging, you're just talking to people matter of factly. Great example. I sit down, to get my hair cut, and typically that person is going to ask you how your day is going. What are you doing? All you have to do is simply say, I'm out looking at houses. And they're going to ask a question. Are you looking to buy a house for yourself? Well, no, actually, it's the business I'm in. I buy houses all the time, and it just builds from there. It's not salesy at all. And by the time we're done, I'm either going to try and buy a house from them, sell a house to them, or turn them into an investor. Every single person.
And the thing is when you get off of having an agenda yourself, and just that, this is who I am, this is what I do, these are the conversations I'm going to have, that it's just a conversation, and you let go of attachment of it going anywhere.
Right.
It's amazing how many seeds you can plant that come back later, and it's unexpected. I want to just do a little break to welcome Bob Boren. Thank you. He said good morning to you and me, and Investor Stubbs, Investor Stubbs, I don't know who the first name is, Bruce Aleo and Samuel Colt Meskimen, Pat Albort, Nanette Henry. Thanks everybody for joining us. So tell us more about like what your focus is now, like, and given your history and what you've learned, where are things at now?
Yeah, so we moved on from that point. We learned how to start structuring deals creatively, using all the different strategies. And I call them strategies because there's a lot of things that people will say, well, that's creative, like purchasing a property subject to a mortgage. In and of itself, that's not creative. That's just another way to finance a deal. A lease option is another way to control a deal. A land contract, a seller carry note and mortgage. All those are just strategies. I like to stack those strategies together, right? So I might go catch up somebody's payment that's in a foreclosure scenario, buy the property subject to, they move out, bring in a financial friend who has a small IRA, using a participating promissory note, use their money to rehab the property, then lease option it to a tenant on the back end. And if there was any equity in the property, we may also have a seller carry in that scenario. Stacking all these different strategies to solve multiple problems. That solves a seller's problem. That solves my financial friend's problem that has a small IRA. They get a great return. That solves the end buyer's problem because they can lease option it. That's what our niche is. Now we also buy the boring way, all cash, but that's boring,
What about hard and private money, or is that too close to banks for you?
So I run a hard money lending company
Okay.
at this point, and so it's very near and dear to my heart. And that came about because when I met my current business partner, 2012-ish, he had never used a bank for any real estate transaction, which was
a match made in heaven.
It was.
Yeah.
God, I hope he doesn't listen to this, but it really was. And it shifted my mindset. He had already started doing some lending just on a very small scale. And he had asked me the question because I was brought up in that mentality of buy 100 rental units that all cash flow $100 a door and make $10,000 a month and your life is going to be great. That's what the pitch was back in the early 2000s. And I still actually hear that same pitch today with about the same numbers, which is a little scary. But he asked me the question. He said, well, how many hours a week does it take to manage 100 rental units? And it's essentially a full-time job. Yes, I know you can hire a management company. There's all these other things, but basically it's a full-time job. And then he said, how many hours do you think it would take to manage 100 loans? And the answer is minimal. It's a few hours compared to a full-time job. And oh, by the way, you can manage a loan portfolio from anywhere in the world with your laptop and your phone. And it was the first, I guess, glimpse of the possibilities of a future in lending. So as we progressed, we were buying and selling, flipping properties together, raising private capital for all of our own deals. We started to get to a point where we had more capital than we had deals. And so now the opposite of what I did the first half of my career, I had built a network. I had put myself out there, started running my own REIA meetings. Jeff was running his own REIA meetings. We became the expert at the front of the room. Little hint to all your listeners, you actually don't have to be an expert. If you're on the stage, people will automatically think you're the expert in the room. So just hosting a meetup, hosting a 10 or 12 people is fine. You will get notoriety and it will bring you deals. So that's where our lending company really grew from. Just word of mouth, referrals, us out there helping people structure their deals, being open to them calling us night and day, asking us, what they can do, help them out of a jam. And so our main focus today is our lending company, doing a 20-ish loans a month out the door. And we're still buying and selling 1 or 2 properties a month as a goal. And it's all really structured around these conversations, people helping people. Like our lending company to this day, and I will never say never, especially on a recorded thing, but we have no desire to have institutional backing or institutional money. All of our investors are people that we can have conversations with. As the market is shifting right now, we're talking to our investors. Are they nervous? In some cases, yes, we need to have a plan A. And then what happens if our default rate goes up and we have to take a bunch of properties back? What's plan B? What's plan C? We can do that with real people. We can't do that with hedge funds and institutions and banks that are regulated by the government and things of that nature.
I love what you're saying, and I think, the economy and humanity and COVID has actually been a blessing in a lot of ways because it's liberating people. Like, people were losing their jobs and then it changed to employers were trying to find employees. And I thought, well, that's strange. All these people lost their jobs and yet all these employers are looking for people to work for them. But it was the lower wage types of jobs. But it's also been the trend towards entrepreneurship and everyone going virtual and everyone not ever wanting being put in a position of someone else being in control of their income and their well-being. And more, I think more and more, these big institutions, too big to fail isn't going to be the case anymore. It's going to be, we don't want governments telling us what we can and can't do. We don't want big institutions restricting our freedom and what we can do. So I love what you're doing because bottom line, it's more freedom. You get to say, you get to control how deals are done.
Well, and the fun thing is, because we're on both sides of the fence, meaning we run a lending company and we're still acquiring our own assets. When I get
you
a
walk your talk, you know what it feels like.
Absolutely. But the flip side of that is our borrowers, when they run into a problem, they just communicate with us and we help them through it. We didn't sell their loan off to some random,
it's not impersonal and, you just go to the website and click on this button and
so we have
we
have an extremely low default rate. I mean, we've taken back less than a dozen properties in the last 10 years, and that's over 1,000 loans for sure. I don't even know what the number is, but so it's very low for that. The other reason I love it is our investors themselves. We've taken mom and pop investors who were getting less than 1% in a bank CD, and they're getting a 9% return, guaranteed and secured by a piece of real estate. It's life-changing for them. And one of my favorite stories, I'll try and tell it quickly, but we bought a property from a guy in Green Bay, Wisconsin, who was battling cancer. And he didn't want to have his wife end up stuck with this property. They had bought this, it was a duplex. They had bought it for his daughter to live in. She did for a few years, but then she moved on, and now he had this duplex. So we structured that deal to where we gave him a down payment. He took seller carryback payments with an 8-year balloon. 8 years was when his wife would be retiring, and if he was passed and no longer there. So at that time, we agreed to a 3% interest rate. Okay. 2 years goes by. Right. 2 years goes by, and I have to call him up, and he was a military chaplain. So his name is Chaplain Ron. So I called Chaplain Ron, and I said, I got some good news and some bad news for you. I said, the good news is I'm going to pay you off. I owe you $127,000. The bad news is I'm going to pay you off. Your income stream is going to stop. And they had gotten used. Oh, by the way, Chaplain Ron is alive and well, in remission.
Yay!
And doing good. But that was a problem. They'd gotten used to living off of that monthly payment. So he knew I ran a lending company. I said, Ron, what if I took that $127,000, I put that into our fund, and you just continue getting, your revenue? And he's like, well, that's great, but what's that going to pay? And he was expecting that it was going to be less than 3%. I said, well, I can't pay you 3%, Ron. And I used that tone of voice, like I was kind of setting him up. I'm like, Ron, I can't pay you 3%. I have to pay you 9% because that is how our fund is set up. And it's awesome. And
that's awesome.
He is so, yeah. And him and his wife, they're investors of ours. They've invested additional money over the top of that, but literally we go to visit them and they've got this huge vegetable garden. They will send vegetables home with us. They will send us a Christmas card.
Of course, they love you now. And I'm so glad Chaplain Ron made it. And we've got some comments here. Terrific news for Chaplain Ron. Great news. People saying hi to us. Hey, Callie. Yeah, so.
Hey, Callie.
Callie Haynes. Derek says hi.
But that's the cool thing is if you do this business for the right reasons, you get to help people and be profitable, and it's a great thing. But it all starts with learning how to talk to people. To me, I won't let a deal or a lead die unless I've gone every avenue. If we get a real estate lead and it's a seller that wants retail price and there's absolutely no way we're going to be able to come to a deal to buy that property, what harm is there in turning the conversation to talking about investing? Last year, I had a gentleman that had a house, $320,000 home. He owned it free and clear. And I knew we weren't going to end up buying the property. It didn't make sense. So I simply asked him, what are you going to do with the money when you sell your house? And we started talking about investing. And this was like April of last year. And I asked him permission. I said, can I follow up with you in a few months, maybe like August 1st, and see if you sold the house? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So I set a calendar reminder. August 1st, I called him back. He had the property under contract to close August 6th. And by mid-August, he invested that $300,000 with us just from a real estate lead. But it was because I asked the right questions and led the conversation. Right. And that helped.
And followed through and were willing and had a system for doing that. Like,
right.
So many people want instant gratification, and so many people do not really understand how to network skillfully.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's going to a mixer or showing up for a workshop or whatever and talking to everybody. No, it's after that. What do? Are you following up? Are you investing time in and showing someone that you're actually very interested and wanting to learn about them, scheduling a time to get to know them better, following up with them? That takes a process, a system, or, following through, being organized, all of that. And that is also showing a person what kind of person you are. Oh,
Absolutely.
this is someone who does what they say they're going to do.
Absolutely.
This is someone that thought enough about me. I was important enough that, wow, he said he was going to follow up with me in a few months on August 1st. And look at that. There, he did it.
Mhm.
I
And
love that.
it's the same way with you hosting this show and us meeting at a mixer and following up, right? You followed up with me, and then we made our assistants do all the work, and we get to do the fun stuff. But
Yeah, that's funny. So I'm going to tattle on Derek and me, because this is truly being successful as an entrepreneur. This podcast is the first time he and I have ever had a conversation together, but not really.
Mhm.
I have an assistant and he has an assistant, and they did all the work to get us together. And we had met on a meeting for podcast hosts and stuff. But this is the first time Derek and I have ever really had a conversation together.
Right.
And yet we had already set the wheels in motion. Our relationship was already getting developed because we had processes in place that helped us do that. So he even said, yeah, we get the fun part. Our assistants did all the work. We get to just show up and have a conversation with each other.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else you want to say that we haven't covered?
I mean, honestly, anybody can do anything they put their mind to. I mentioned before, I'm just a construction worker with a PhD, a public high school diploma, and a good work ethic.
Yeah.
I never pictured in my early 20s that someday I'd be writing millions of dollars of loans and, doing the deals I do and speaking and, being on podcasts, all this stuff. It just comes down to your own belief system and your own work ethic. There's nothing that
Absolutely.
you can't do.
And Bob Boren, I hope I'm saying your name right. DM me if you want a little help with that, with hiring assistants and automating your business. I'm happy to do a free connection call with you, Bob, to help you figure out how to take things to the next level. All right. So, Derek, I've really enjoyed this. I hope this isn't the first and last time we chat. And I'm glad you're making the rounds in the podcast circuit, because what I love is having guests like you on my podcast that are showing people how to think differently and how to be more creative about how you put deals together, because there's a lot of people that get their education, say, from Fortune Builders or other Carlton Sheets, if you really want to go back a few years, or Renatus or whatever, and they learn the basics and really mainstream strategies, wholesaling, rehabbing, and buying and hold rentals. But what they're not learning is, because they're new to the business, they don't know how to think creatively about how to put deals together.
Yep.
And then you turned a problem into a whole new strategy. When you built that whole portfolio up and lost it in the recession of 2007 and 8, and you realized, I'm never doing business with banks again, that was a very valuable lesson, right? Because had that not happened, you wouldn't have learned more creative strategies and had more control over your real estate assets, right?
Well, and the other side of that, Rihanna, is right now, a lot of people are freaking out as the market is shifting. And I am just sitting here like this. I mean, it's Christmas. There is so many opportunities that are coming up already and going to be coming up if you know what those opportunities look like and can jump on them. So I've been looking forward to this market shift for several years. I was hoping it would have happened sooner, but it's here, and there's going to be opportunity. There is opportunity.
Yeah. That's what I was just coaching a couple right before this call, and we were talking about that very thing. Like, look, do research in the market you're in and look at what the opportunities are right now. It's not rehabbing. It's look at, do you need any studying pace more be subject to stuff? And I said, maybe it's buying rentals sub 2. maybe it's something else, but look at what's going on in your market and think about what you can take advantage of, what you can capitalize on, because it really is a timing thing and knowing how to take advantage of opportunities and how to see them, not having tunnel vision on just these standard ways of looking at things. Wouldn't
I
you
have
agree?
a good friend of mine that he's a door knocker by trade. That's what he's built his whole portfolio, just knocking on people's doors. And he loves using options, as do I. And so he's in the Florida market knocking on people's doors. There's blue tarps everywhere from the storm.
Mm,
And a lot of these people do not have the proper insurance. They don't have the money they need to repair their house. He doesn't need to buy their house right now. So he's willing to put up some money to get an option to buy their house for the next 20 years, right? At a fair price. But they can get their roof fixed right now or whatever they need. So again, huge opportunity, not taking advantage of anybody's situation, but helping, So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And for me personally, every time somebody tells me the interest rates have gone up, I don't care, because my interest rate is based off of either what I'm buying it subject to or what myself and the seller are willing to do. I bought a property in April, $10,000 down, 0% interest, $500 a month payments for 5 years with a balloon. And that was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch house on half an acre of land in the hottest selling market we've seen in years. It can be done anytime, anywhere, any market, if you know how to talk to people.
absolutely. I have a couple that they just completed this rehab, but the way they got it is they weren't the highest offer.
Mhm.
And it was because the seller liked them better, because the husband of my client, they had built such great rapport with her. She even told them what the other offer was, and if they could just get close to it, that she would take their offer because
Mhm.
she liked them better. It didn't happen with the other offer. A month or two goes by, they come back and they say, hey, because they were offering over 100 under asking.
Yeah.
And then they came back and the market had shifted. And they said, hey, you still interested? And they're like, well, yeah, but the market's changed. So
Mhm.
now we can only buy it for 500, which was another 35,000 less. And the guy's like, oh my God, you're killing me. And they ended up buying it 515. It was like at the unicorn rehab. It went super smoothly. And it's on the market at 750. It's been a little over a week. They've got their first offer with a second offer coming in. And it was because they had built such great rapport with the sellers that it wasn't about getting the most. It was about the seller just liked them more because they had more of a relationship. So it's
And
not always about the money.
it's not about the money. And I would add to that, Rihanna, every person I talk to, I want to leave something of value. That may be a referral to a real estate agent or a lender or a contractor,
Leave them
whatever
better
it
than
is.
you found them. Yeah.
Leave them better than you found them. And then 2, 3, 4 years down the road, you'll get some random phone call that, Betty told me to call you. You were so great to Betty. And you don't even remember who Betty was. You don't at all. But it was because you left value along this trail of breadcrumbs that you put down. And that's when people will start calling you lucky. Oh, you're lucky. You found that deal. You're lucky. No, you built that luck along the
Yeah,
way.
it's taken me 10
made your
years
business
to
run.
build that luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
We're what is that? I can't remember how that quote goes, but basically we're overnight success, 20 years in the making or something like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
So
Hey, Chris Steele and Tasmaya Rahman. Nice seeing you guys. Chris, I can't wait for your interview on the podcast. Chris is really good at talking to people. He's
nice.
really good at sales, really good at seller calls. So, Derek, if you were to have a rooftop message that you could shout from the rooftops for everyone to hear and heed, what would your advice be to, say, newer investors?
Don't use your personal home as a piggy bank to go invest with. And I made this mistake. It's very it's very easy to go get a home equity line of credit, use that money to start flipping properties or buy a rental or use it for down payments. But when there's a market shift, and I've already heard of this starting to happen, these can get called due. Almost every one of these loans, if you actually read the documents you signed, have a call provision. So you can lose your personal home. And I fortunately did not lose my personal home. I lost a lot of my other assets, but it's just, I see people on Bigger Pockets and all these other forums talking about like it's some magical formula that they just thought of. Oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I can just go, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Use other people's money, OPM. Yeah. And another reason for that is that's easy because you don't have to reach out. You don't have to do the footwork. You don't have to develop the relationships. That means you have a limiting belief, which is where I can help you, of you still think you're asking someone for something. You don't realize that you are creating a mutually beneficial arrangement when you're leveraging other people's money. They're benefiting from that opportunity. It's a win-win situation. So if you feel kind of stifled or stuck and feel like trapped in very traditional ways of investing, then come talk to me. I'm a certified NLP coach, certified in hypnotherapy. My shtick is mindset, habits, and accountability. To shift the mindset to get you over fear, frustration, and failure, things that block you, to help you set up habits and routines and processes and systems like Derek and I did. This is the first time he and I've had a conversation because we had processes and assistants who got us together for this podcast. And then there's taking action and getting support and accountability to have you follow through and keep taking action. Like Derek's example of, he talked to the seller, wasn't a good fit for him to buy that seller's property, but through a conversation, just talking to that seller, he said, well, hey, there might be another option for you. Can I follow up with you in a few months? And now that guy invests in his hard money lender business. So there's so many ways to make money in real estate. And what Derek's saying is be creative and don't think limited options like just funding deals with a HELOC or that everything has to be through a bank. There's so many ways you can acquire properties and make it be about how you're helping people. You can get very creative when you're looking at a way to make the deal work because you want to help someone. It takes all the stress and pressure off of you when it's all about them and how you can help them. Anything else before we wrap things up there, Derek?
I have two things, Rihanna. Number one, I'm authoring a book and co-authoring a second book. I'd love to be able to give these away to your audience.
Absolutely.
They're going to be published hopefully in January. So I'll give the electronic version away to anybody that sends me an email that says they heard me on your show. And my direct email address, which myself and my assistant monitor, is my first name, Derek, DEREK, at best, REI funding.com, which is our lending company. So
and
Derek,
I'll put that in the post as well, Derek.
awesome. The second thing is I host a conference once a year, and it's for advanced strategies and for networking. It's an event that we're really proud of. It's called the Generations of Wealth. And there's a couple reasons that it came to fruition. Number one is we took over somebody else's conference who was, became very, very good friends of ours. We were at all of their events. They just got to a point where age and health and just didn't want to host anymore. So we changed the name Generations of Wealth because it was like them passing the baton to our generation. The other reason is I encourage people to bring their kids. And the kids can sit in on as much or as little as they want. There's no additional fees for them to be at the conference. Ideally, if they're 10 and older, sitting in the room, that's not for them to learn all these strategies. What it's for is for them to build a network of other kids from around the country who have parents that are freaks like us. And it's been so awesome for my kids and all the other kids that have
Well,
been
please
involved.
post about that event in my group. Did you join, did your assistant join my group for you?
I don't know, but we got to make sure our assistants make that happen. But yes, I definitely want to be a part of your group. And that conference is going to be in Cancun, Mexico, February 2023. It is not a huge event. I mean, this is not a sales pitch. I literally only have a certain block at this resort. And once it's filled, I can't guarantee they'll give me any more rooms. So 125 to 150 people is our goal because of the networking. So our conference is 5 days. We have speakers they're not up on stage pitching their products. They're not telling you to run to the back of the room in the next 10 minutes, any of that stuff. We have speakers from 9 a.m. to 1 o'clock each day, open networking the rest of the day through dinner, and then town hall sessions in the evening, which are a little bit more interactive. You can come to as much or as little as you want. It's heavy on networking. We want you to be able to spend time with the speakers, each other, your family, if you choose to bring them. I've not seen or heard of any other event like this, which is why we're super proud of it. And its website is gowvoyage.com, which stands for Generations of Wealth Voyage. This event is supposed to be on a cruise ship, but COVID kind of killed that for us. So we are on land. We are in Cancun, beautiful all-inclusive resort, and likely we'll get back on the ocean, hopefully after this event. But GOW.
I know your email's probably in my DMs, but Derek at what?
Best
REI funding?
Best REIfunding.com.
I'll put all this in the chat in the post after the live goes. All right, everybody. And Derek, it was such a pleasure. I hope our paths cross again. So Derek wants to give away one of his books, a digital copy of it. So if you email him at derek@bestreifunding.com, he will send you a digital copy. Well, most likely it will be his assistant. What's her name?
Tabitha. Yes, Tabitha will do that.
Yeah. And if you're interested in that conference, it's in February in Cancun, only 125 to 150 people. I'll include the link for that, gowvoyage.com. You can sign up for that. Derek, thank you so much. I look forward to more conversations with you because you've definitely piqued my interest.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and we need to make sure that your assistant and my assistant get us back together again.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Thanks, Derek. Bye.